Hello, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I am going to be reading 3 Kindle Unlimited romances that have a small town, hopefully Gilmore Girls vibe. Now, I asked y'all on Instagram a couple of weeks ago, probably more like a month ago at this point, what your favorite small town romances are, what you would recommend if I was looking for something with like Gilmore Girls vibes. I have been rewatching Gilmore Girls as I do every fall, and it has been so delightful. And I wouldn't say that I'm like getting bored of the same storyline over and over again, but I am looking for something in a romance that has, again, that similar vibe, that similar essence. I don't expect to get a 100% match with any of these, but I am hoping to hopefully find a romance that sort of fits the bill when it comes to overall vibes, tone, maybe a little bit like character dynamics. I would love like a Luke Lorelai dynamic or like a Rory Jess dynamic. So I selected 3 romances that y'all recommended me that were also kind of already on my radar, and those are what I'm going to be reading today. I don't know much about any of them, which I personally enjoy when I'm going into these vlogs. So let me quickly run you through what I'm going to be reading, and then we can get into the vlog portion of the video. First up, we have Juniper Hill by Devney Perry. I've not read any books by Devney Perry before, and I am really excited to hop into this book and see if I enjoy her storytelling. If so, she has a pretty extensive backlist, so I would be excited to read more books, maybe even in this series. The series as a whole is a small town romance series, which would be really exciting to have more to kind of like fall into or dive into. I also selected On the Rocks by Candy Steiner. This book is, I would say, a little bit older than the other ones, not in like a bad way. I think, if anything, that makes me more tempted to pick it up because I feel like it's had that longevity, and other people seem to really like this one. Again, another small town romance that I don't know anything about, but I am also excited to get into. And then lastly, I would say is like one of the most indie of the indies. We have Lovelight Farms by, I want to say, B.K. Borison. I've never read anything by this author before. I feel like she has come on my radar in the past year because a lot of people have been hyping up these books. This cover is absolutely delightful, and I do know that this one is set at a Christmas tree farm, which like, I need that. I really need that in my life right now as I am struggling and fighting not to put up my Christmas decor, even though Halloween hasn't even hit yet. So very excited to give this one a try. I think Pickles is also excited to give this one a try as well. But I'm gonna go ahead and get into the vlog portion of the video. I don't know what I'm gonna pick up first, but I'm sure future me will tell you. So I decided to start with, I believe, the oldest book amongst the ones that I'm reading for this video, On the Rocks by Candy Steiner. I want to say this book came out in like 2017 or 2018, which feels like not that long ago. But when it comes to books being published, it feels like, I guess, quite a while has passed. This one is really fun. It's not really giving me like Stars Hollow, Gilmore Girls vibes, but I'm not mad at it. It's about our 2 main characters, Ruby Grace and Noah. Noah is a barrel raiser, I believe is what they call it. He creates the barrels for whiskey for a local whiskey distillery, and his family has been closely tied to this distillery. I think his like great grandfather or grandfather helped to kind of found this distillery, but since nothing was ever in writing, he never really got true credit for it. But his family like wants to keep that legacy alive, and so everybody kind of still works at the distillery despite this lack of like a formal legacy. They're also kind of sad about how their father passed away semi-recently, and I'm wondering if that's going to come into the story later. But Noah is a barrel raiser. He is definitely a good time guy. He is a little bit of a ladies' man from what I can tell. At the start of the story, he has an interaction with our heroine, Ruby Grace, who is 19. She is a student at UNC. She is recently engaged. So definitely different than the world that I live in for sure, but this is definitely something that does happen. I want to say she is one of the daughters of like the mayor or something like that. Like she is part of a wealthy family, and she found a guy at UNC who wants to be a politician, and I think he's like 24 or 25. So she is going to get married to him and guess help his political aspirations and drop out of college. But I guess no one has ever asked her if this is really what she wants. And in their first interactions, Ruby Grace is forced to sort of sit with her emotions and her feelings about this marriage. You know, she goes home to help plan this wedding with her mom. And I say help plan because like her mom is kind of taking over her for herself. Yeah, Ruby is like so caught up in the planning of the wedding that she doesn't really stop to consider whether this is what she really wants. She definitely wants to get an education and she wants to continue that on. I don't know like what her career aspirations and ambitions are. I'm hoping we find that out later, but at this moment like is just now questioning whether or not she wants to marry this guy. She likes him, but it's like, is this what I really want out of life? The way this conversation comes about is that she is going to pick up a single barrel of whiskey as a wedding gift for her future husband, and Noah is charged with like helping her pick one out, and they have like, I don't know, kind of like a bantery situation going on. He is a little bit like, she's a spoiled rich brat, and she is kind of being a spoiled rich brat, and she's like, ew, like he's gruff and like he just wants to get my pants or whatever. And so they have that sort of first run-in. In the scene that I'm actually about to read, they're going to have another run-in at this like big party that everybody's at, everybody in town, and I'll be curious to see how their relationship develops. The only thing that I'm a little bit on the fence about at the moment is there going to be a time jump? Because the way they talk about Ruby, it makes it sound like Noah is not anywhere near 19. Like I'm fine with reading about a 19-year-old heroine, but I don't want there necessarily to be an age gap. Like I don't feel like that's what I necessarily want right now. I mean, I guess there's gonna be an age gap regardless, but hopefully she decides not to get married and they get together when she's like 25 or something. I mean, I'm down for whatever, like I'm curious to see what happens, but I'm getting the vibe that there might be a time jump. So I don't know when that's gonna come in, if it does come in, but so far I am actually really enjoying this. I'm liking the dynamic between Ruby Grace and Noah, and while I feel like it feels like a familiar sort of setting, a familiar sort of small town vibe, it does feel, I would say, pretty distinctly different from a lot of the other small town romances I've read, and I'm liking that. Like, I think something about small town romances is that they are so comforting and they are so fun to kind of dip your toes into, but I feel like sometimes they can all kind of run together if you're only relying on that like small town vibe. But I feel like this story knows what it wants to be. This entire series is about this like family, about these brothers who are part of this whiskey distillery. Yeah, I don't know. So far it's promising. I like Candy Steiner's writing, so I expected to enjoy this. I've heard so much about it, even though it was published kind of a while ago. So I'm hopeful that this remains a really good book. And I hope to figure that out as the day continues on. My goal, I think, is to finish this one after I go shopping for a wedding guest dress. I'm heading to the mall right now, and then I'm gonna go to my little sister's house to feed her cat Honey. My sister actually went to Texas OU weekend. Hook 'em fucking horns. We did it. We did it, y'all. And so I have to go feed Honey, kind of check in on her. I'm gonna take you along with me for that. I'll probably be vlogging quite a bit from my sister's house. Plan on spending some time there and like hanging out with Honey. So I'm gonna go ahead and go, and like I said, I'm gonna try to finish this book. I also want to get at least halfway, I would say, with like whatever book I decide to pick up next. I don't know if I want to read Lovelight Farms today, or if I'm feeling more, is it Juniper? I don't know the name of the Devney Perry one. We'll see, but I will be back. Okay, so we're in my sister's very dark apartment, although I feel like it doesn't look that much different from my room at home. But I'm 50% into On the Rocks by Candy Steiner, and I wanted to update you on my thoughts and feelings. So since we last spoke, I will say not a lot has happened. There has been no time jump, so I guess we are just rocking with the 19-year-old, 28-year-old age gap thing. It's weird that I'm like apprehensive about that, I feel like, because age gaps don't typically bother me, but for some reason this one just like, I don't know, am I just getting old? I don't really know. I don't know. I just like, I'm not loving that aspect of it. That being said, like that aside, the book has mostly just been Ruby Grace and Noah having these moments, hanging out together. I think she's also like hung out with his brothers at this point. Also sorry if you can hear Honey eating in the background or Honey's fountain. It's kind of noisy in here, but we're starting to see some cracks obviously in Ruby's facade. You know, she's already questioning things, but I think things are getting even trickier as her fiance is now in town helping her with the final like stages of planning for the wedding, and it's pretty obvious to us as readers that like they're not a great fit. Even though he's a pretty nice guy, it just doesn't seem like he really respects Ruby and like wants the best for her. He kind of just wants whatever's going to, again, like help his political career ambitions. So I definitely feel like she's better suited for Noah. In the scene that I just left off on, he's now volunteering at the retirement community that Ruby feels really passionately about, so I think that's a really sweet way for them to connect. And his brothers honestly kind of like encouraged him to be there for her, maybe not like pursue her romantically, but to maybe help her discover her passions are important and that she should go after those instead of maybe marrying this guy who doesn't necessarily respect her in the way that he should. So I'm having a pretty good time. It's not like my most favorite romance ever. Right now it's kind of feeling like a 3-star to me, like super solid, super fine. I actually just finished a book by Elsie Silver. I think it was A Photo Finish, and that one was, I would say, pretty similar in terms of it being kind of a small town romance and stuff, but I just way preferred that relationship dynamic. And it was an age gap as well, but I think the heroine was like 26, and I mean, it's definitely comparing apples to oranges in some ways, but I almost read that book for this video, and I kind of wish that I had saved it because that was a 5-star read for me. This one's just like, it's good, it's certainly good, but I'm not really feeling like this is the most puzzle piecey romance. Even though I do think that Noah and Ruby Grace are like well suited for each other, I kind of feel like just missing that pizzazz, that oomph, if you will. Like this is just a typical romance with no tropes, and I want some tropes. Like I want a guy who like has a little bit of self-loathing going on, like Cole in A Photo Finish. So if anything, maybe pick that book up. I mean, this one's cute too, don't get me wrong, it's cute. So I'm gonna go ahead and finish it. I will update you tomorrow morning on my final thoughts, and hopefully I will have gotten started on one of the other books and gotten like 20% in, but I'm gonna go ahead and head home, finish this book, and hit the hay. Also, I did find a dress. Why is it so hard to find wedding guest dresses? Abercrombie came in clutch and not take any footage in that dressing room, because who decided one overhead light was the solution for a dressing room. Good morning. I'm still in my PJs. I obviously have makeup on. I am slowly getting ready for my day, but last night I did end up finishing On the Rocks by Candy Steiner. As I kind of predicted, this is definitely a 3-star read for me. It was good, but I feel like I finally figured out what about this didn't totally work for me, besides the fact that there was never a time jump. The narrative was very much inside our characters' heads the entire time. There were obviously moments of dialogue. We did have interaction between hero and heroine, but I really wanted a little bit more from their interactions, and I feel like I just wasn't totally convinced that they were a good fit, especially with the way that they said I love you kind of quickly. It just didn't really totally work for me. I wasn't convinced that they would be a perfect pairing. They were both sweet people, so it wasn't like outside of the realm of possibility that they could like each other. It wasn't enemies to lovers, it wasn't Grumpy Sunshine, but like I just feel like I needed a little bit more from their relationship for me to totally like buy into it. That being said, it was a perfectly enjoyable read. I had a good time reading it, but this isn't something that I'm going to probably remember for years and years to come. I have since moved on to Juniper Hill. That's what I started this morning. I finally remember what the name of this book is. This one is by Devney Perry. I feel like Devney Perry is an author who I hadn't really heard people talking about until this year. Maybe I have just been kind of living under a rock because apparently she's super popular. And this is my first exploration or foray, I guess you could say, into her work, and it's off to a pretty good start. Juniper Hill is about our main character, Memphis, which I will say is a little confusing because we've gotten so many different place names throughout the story that I was confused that that was her name at first. Memphis, our heroine, is the daughter of a hotelier, I guess. I think her grandfather started a chain of boutique hotels. Her dad took it over, but we find out pretty early on that she is no longer living this like rich and privileged lifestyle in New York. Memphis is on her way to Montana to work at a hotel as a housekeeper. Apparently this is like something that she's overqualified for, and she is taking herself, she's a 25-year-old woman, and her like 2-month-old son to Montana to work as a housekeeper at this establishment. She picked Montana for a few different reasons, the biggest ones being that her father doesn't have any hotels, I want to say, in Montana, and it was just a place where she felt like she could raise her kid very differently than the way that she was raised, I suppose. But her kid is colicky and she's having a hard time with him, and she is living in a loft apartment very close to this guy's house. He is the chef at the inn/hotel that she's working at. His name is Knox, is the brother of the person that hired Memphis, and he is very grumpy. He doesn't love that someone like basically rented out his loft apartment without his consent. It was his sister, so he's not like mad at her, but he is definitely very grumpy. He is the chef, like I said, at that restaurant, and we're already getting some kind of like Grumpy Sunshine vibes between Memphis and Knox. I think Memphis is a little less sunshiny than maybe some other sunshiny heroines, but she definitely has a, I would say, good vibe about her. And in general, I think this one is giving me way more in terms of Gilmore Girls vibes than the last book that we read. I feel like that last one, I was trying to think yesterday of how I would like pitch it to someone who is looking for a Gilmore Girls romance. That one, I guess, is kind of like a Jess Rory situation. The hero in that one doesn't remind me that much of Jess. It was just like similar dynamics in that like she is the sort of like wealthy heroine and he is the guy from the wrong side of the tracks. This one definitely feels more like, you know, Memphis is Lorelai moving to the small town to like make a life for herself that is away from her family and away from her family's way of life. Knox, I could say, kind of reminds me of Luke because he does have his own restaurant, and it's not a diner, it's like a fine dining establishment, but he like begrudgingly feeds her, and I'm getting good vibes from this book so far. I'm enjoying it. I will say it's moving a lot slower in pace than I was expecting. I'm 20% in and there hasn't really been any movement, I would say, in terms of like relationship dynamic or relationship building. And there's also not much in the way of us understanding Memphis's life. We know she's been getting like phone calls for the past little while from someone, but we don't really know who's calling her. We're assuming it's like her dad or maybe her baby's father. We're not entirely sure, but I want to get some more of that and understand her character more, so I root for her more as the story goes on. Like, I'm very sympathetic because she's a single mom and she's trying to make a life for herself. I feel like I would be more sympathetic if I knew more about her. So hopefully you'll get that in the next like 30-ish%, but I'm gonna go ahead and keep reading. Hopefully I'll be back in like real close and I'll update you at the 50% mark. I am dressed for the day, casually, obviously, but I am now 50% into Juniper Hill by Devney Perry, and it's cute. I'm really enjoying this one. This is definitely giving me those Luke Lorelai vibes, which I didn't realize like how much I needed, but I just love our heroine Memphis. I really do feel like I'm getting to know her more as the story goes on. I understand her backstory backstory now, and I can really respect her independence and like how she wants to create the best life possible for her son. And I also understand her hesitation to enter into some sort of like relationship with Knox, but Knox is really like melting my heart. I will say I don't know that his character will work for everyone. I was a little surprised at how quickly he changed from grumpy to sunshine, but I think again, understanding his backstory now and sort of like understanding the kind of guy he is really, really sweet at heart. He's not just like grumpy towards everyone. He is just someone who has some trauma in his past, especially surrounding the idea of children. So I definitely understand why he is the way he is, but overall, like, I am enjoying the story. There has been one sort of like intimate moment, but it definitely wasn't what I was expecting. It wasn't that graphic, not in like a bad way, but I guess I was expecting maybe a little bit of a smuttier story. I think the only thing that would like lessen my enjoyment of the story, which in my mind right now is kind of sitting at a 4-star, would be if there was some sort of conflict coming into play with our heroine's family. I'm sure that that is going to come into play. It's not that I don't want it to be a conflict at all, dependent on the way that it's handled. I don't even know if I said this in my final thoughts about On the Rocks, but the third act conflict I did not like in that book, and that's really what kept it from being a 4-star read for me. Also, the romance to me wasn't like as strong as it could be, but really that third act conflict was not it for me, and it involved our heroine's family. In this book, I am expecting again that like family aspect to come in, but I think it depends on how strong it is, if it's like completely out of left field or just far-fetched, and that's kind of how it felt in the last book. I was like, this is just like not something that would really happen. I mean, it is, but I didn't enjoy it. Story, it's like I'm fully prepared for whatever's going to happen, but I'm hoping that it's not like really dramatic. I don't know, because everything so far is going so well, and continue on our perpetual quest to find a book that has the same vibes as Gilmore Girls. Hello friends. I finished Juniper Hill and now I'm 50% into Lovelight Farms. So, hey buddy. Pickles is demanding of attention at all times. Anyway, Juniper Hill I think is going to be a 4-star read for me. It did end up having an ending that was a little bit over the top, but I feel like people warned me about that a little bit, that a lot of Devney Perry stories can kind of have not like a darkness to them, but definitely like grittier themes and topics. I feel like that definitely came into play at the latter part of this book. For some reason it felt like less cheesy and inauthentic compared to On the Rocks. Not that I didn't enjoy that one, but I do think that Juniper Hill was better. I think this is a story that's not going to work for a lot of people because it's not a book where there's a lot of tension between our hero and heroine, and I don't mean angst, I mean tension. You know, there's not really a lot of like fighting feelings for each other like there are in some other romances. They get together at around the 50% mark, and any sort of conflict really comes from external forces in the latter 50% of the story, and it's something that didn't personally bother me, especially given the sorts of situations that our characters were in. Like, Memphis had a child. It really wouldn't have made sense for her relationship with Knox to be tumultuous, and so I didn't mind how the story was laid out, but I think that's something that might not work for some people. In terms of Gilmore Girls vibes, I don't really think this one had Gilmore Girls vibes like at all, despite it having some similarities, I guess, in terms of like Lorelai and Memphis both being single younger mothers, and you know, moving to like a small town or whatever. Tone, definitely not Gilmore Girls at all, and I would say there aren't really any relationships that resemble the one between Knox and Memphis in Gilmore Girls. So it was still a really fun time. I'm really glad that I read this, and it does make me want to continue on and read more in this series. It has sort of a quietness to it, I would say, Juniper Hill. Something, even though there is like, I guess, a little bit of drama at the end of the story, there is something that just feels like really cozy and warm about it, but none so cozy and warm as in Lovelight Farms. So let's move on and talk about this one because, wow, I think this is my favorite one of the video. I love when things go up instead of down. I feel like oftentimes the KU, I'll like read the best book first, and then the other two kind of struggle. This one is probably my favorite, so wasn't really expecting it. This one is about our main character, Stella, and her mother passed away, I want to say a little while ago, but it's something that she's still dealing with emotionally. She has a father who essentially like had her out of wedlock. Like, he got her mom pregnant and then immediately got another woman pregnant, kind of like One Tree Hill, for instance. So he doesn't really want that much to do with his daughter, but his son, Stella's brother, like wants stuff to do with her, and so she's still kind of in the fold there. That's something that kind of comes into play in the story. It's not that important, not sure why that's the first thing I'm telling you. Owns her own Christmas tree farm. How fucking delightful is that? And at the beginning of the story, it instantly felt Gilmore Girls-y to me. I think it was because of the tone of the story, the fact that it is centered around a holiday, and we know that the Gilmore Girls really love holidays, and just the overall, I guess, banter between Luca and Stella. At the beginning of the story, it was a little confusing, like, who Luca really was in, like, the first chapter, but we quickly find out that Luca is Stella's best friend. They've been friends for about 10 years at this point. They met when Stella was about 21, so I guess that makes her around 30 at this point, and she is trying to get her Christmas tree farm business off the ground, I guess. guess. She bought it from someone else, but he left it in kind of disrepair, and so she's having to like struggle to figure it out. She lives in a small town. Luca lives in New York City, but he comes frequently to visit Stella, and she has propositioned him and asked him, hey, will you pretend to be my boyfriend because I entered this competition that I could really use the money from? And it's this like social media competition where I guess like small businesses in like a travel sense are at play. So like Stella basically said that she owns the small business with her boyfriend, and I think that's kind of why she believes that she got this opportunity. So now she is asking Luca like, hey, will you pretend to be my boyfriend? And it's pretty obvious to us as readers that like Luca kind of has a thing for Stella from the beginning, and we get to see their relationship kind of unfold through the guise or the lens of this fake relationship, and it is so delightful. This is another one that I don't think will work for everyone, since it is a friends to lovers story, and it is a really heavy emphasis on the friends part. Sometimes friends to lovers, it's like, oh, they knew each other beforehand and were like acquaintances. No, this is like they were best friends, they text each other frequently, and I know that that doesn't work for some people, but for me, I love it. I love friends to lovers. I think it is a natural progression of a relationship sometimes, and it feels a little bit more authentic, and I can understand why people would want to be in a romantic relationship because they have years of like knowing the other person ahead of time. I feel like I'm not really selling the story very well, but the story is essentially, again, Luca and Stella kind of like entering into this fake relationship for this competition that has not occurred yet, even at this 50% mark, and also Stella getting her place ready for this, you know, kind of like, not competition, but for someone to visit and like, you know, kind of see what the farm is all about. It's just really charming. I love the cast of characters. I already care so much about the side characters, which I wasn't expecting, and I feel like was missing from some of these other books, which isn't to say that there were not side characters, but I feel like the ones in this book really do give me more like Stars Hollow vibes. You're definitely getting just like warm fuzzy feelings. You know the patrons of the town, you know Stella's immediate friends who like don't live on the farm with her, but like work on the farm with her, and it's a delight. I'm having such a good time. And the one steamy encounter that has happened so far, it wasn't like an actual sex scene, but it was kind of like that lead up before they were interrupted. It was surprisingly hot. I like wasn't expecting it. I mean, I've been enjoying the sort of like misunderstandings, I guess you could say, between Luca and Stella up until this point. For some reason I keep blanking on Stella's name. There's definitely some misunderstandings in the sense that they both do like each other romantically but just aren't saying anything, and I think Stella hasn't really come to terms 100% with her feelings, but I was like liking that but wasn't entirely sure if I was going to like totally be into their relationship. And then that like steamy moment happened and I was like, yes, absolutely, I'm here for this. It doesn't necessarily remind me again of any of the Gilmore Girls sort of like relationship dynamics. It's not really giving Luke and Lorelai at all, but I don't care because I'm having a good time. So anyway, I'm gonna finish this book off. I will update you with my final thoughts and then we can wrap up this vlog. I've got my buddies with me, and I thought I'd tell you about my final thoughts on Love Light Farm so I could wrap this vlog up. I think I'm gonna give this book 5 stars. I think it's more of a 4-star read technically. Just some of the things that Luca says to Stella at the end of the book I think really pushed this to a 5-star for me. It was just so sweet and heartfelt, and I liked that the conflict was very short-lived. I'll say I think the third act conflict in this book could have used a little work. I appreciated that it was, you know, abridged, abbreviated, like wasn't overly drawn out. I can appreciate that, but I feel like the person that caused the third act conflict should have had a stronger reason for causing the conflict. I feel like if you're not going to go very hard on a third act conflict, I get it. Like I appreciate the abbreviation there, but I feel like there just could have been a better reason for it, if that makes sense. It felt kind of weak and silly. So yeah, I don't know. It was a fun time despite that, and regardless of that. I liked that person that was trying to like sabotage the farm, like that's what's coming to them, but it also like wasn't too intense. I just feel like the overall vibes of this book are just absolutely incredible. It really does give me the biggest Gilmore Girls vibes of all of the books, even if it doesn't really share like relationship patterns, I guess, with Gilmore Girls. I think if you're looking for a delightful Christmassy romance, this is definitely one to pick up. I don't think I have read any Christmas romances that I've read except for Window Shopping by Tessa Bailey, and I'm always looking for new holiday reads to add to my list. Especially as a reviewer, I would love to be able to put together like a holiday romance list at some point. I just have never really found a ton that I really enjoy. Now we've got 2. This was such a good read. Honestly, all 3 of these books were so fun for different reasons. Again, this one's great if you want Gilmore Girls vibes and you really lean into like the holiday part of Gilmore Girls. Like that's what really appeals to you. In a lot of ways, that's what appeals to me. It's like those changing leaves, the snow, because we don't have that here in Texas. So getting to like live vicariously through the Gilmore Girls, I really appreciate, and I just love this book. I think it was really, really good, and I think a lot of y'all will have a good time with it if you can get down with friends to lovers, which I know not everybody can. So like I said, I think all of these are great. I think I'd recommend any of these 3 books. I think they're all going to give you something a little bit different. I think the first one is the least Gilmore Girls-esque. Definitely feels more like country small town vibes, not like that delightful New England-y vibe. And the second one, I guess, is technically set in Montana, although it does feel a touch more Gilmore-y, I think. Anyway, I had such a fun time doing this. I hope y'all had a fun time watching it. Maybe you'll be inspired to pick up some of these books in the future. I have some new authors that I want to read from now too. I am definitely going to be picking up more Devney Perry in the future and a lot more BK Morrison. So anyway, thanks so much for watching. I love y'all so much, and until next time.